Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Clifford Carnicom is our guest, talking about chemtrails. Is only one part of the chemical, biological testing going on against us. I would say that it's kind of a dual axis. We've got everything happening with the in the air, in the water. They poison the water, they poison the air. They've been caught red-handed doing it. They institutionalize what they're doing right in front of our faces many times. It's the arrogance, the sodium fluoride and the stannous fluoride and the rest of it, documented to be deadly poison. But then you have the vaccines. They're also poisoning you through those. See, if they're admitted to have done all this horrible stuff in the past, how do you then now trust them to take your vaccines? If one of the biggest pharmacological companies in the world, Bayer, would knowingly put AIDS virus in your drugs, knowingly, and hepatitis C, knowing it was in there, and still selling it, then what would the government and these other groups do? So I don't want to hear it's too dastardly too big. Clifford Carnicom, how did you wake up to this and then get into the atmosphere manipulation and then shift into the biological effects of that, but then the biological effects of the other spraying we know is going on?
My work started at the very beginning of 1999, Alex, in February, and we go outside quite a bit. My wife and I go camping quite a bit, and I have a background that's outdoors quite a bit. And I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is a high desert region, certainly one of the classic regions for high desert, blue skies, just beautiful vistas. Many artists live here because of that. And so it's actually an ideal laboratory if a person wants to be in a certain place to examine this issue. And February 14th, it was Valentine's Day, was the day that I actually started to work. And it had been preceded by several weeks of noticing a pattern that we would head out on our trips for the morning of the weekend. It would look absolutely beautiful when we would wake up. Very, very typical weather conditions for the high desert Southwest. And then we'd have breakfast, and about an hour and a half later we'd go out, and the weather had completely changed. And that was acting really at a subconscious level for 2 to 3 weeks. And then on that February 14th, I was out the door. At the time, it was still perfectly blue, and this aircraft went directly overhead. And what was different this time is I just watched. I'm sure it was being triggered at a subconscious level, but this time I just stood and I just watched. And I watched the transition take place for the first time. And the amazing thing is that a major transition can actually take place in about a half hour of time if the operation is large enough. So you can completely transform the atmosphere in a regional area in a fairly short period of time.
You can watch a clear sky be totally filled with these trails that just stay there.
Oh, I've counted in a couple times. I have counted over 100 passes. You can't say individual aircraft, but over 100 passes within a 2-hour period. They just blanket the sky and completely alter it. And so I started taking photographs and showed that progression for the very first time, that you had an unnatural situation that was taking place. And I simply opened the door by posting the photographs on the website and really just raised the issue. I mean, that's sort of my style. I wasn't trying to. I knew it was wrong. At a gut level, I knew it was wrong. At the very least, you would call this a question of pollution. And the website started, and at that point, it was fairly clear very soon that there was an interest in my work by military, industrial, chemical, pharmaceutical, medical, chemical complex. It was very shortly after you would find, and I was just an individual, really a pretty low-key person. I was a quiet and conservative federal employee.
They were living on your website.
But I was drawing attention very early in the game because my work is more of an analytical nature, that's for sure. It's, observation and analysis, that's my background. And then it started from there, and from that point on, I started my work and ended up, I've spent a probably good 6 years. The past year, I have not been actively involved in research because I've reached really thresholds of what I can do. It does look like there's another subject I'm going to be getting involved in. But there are literally thousands of pages, I would assume, that I have written now over 6 years and devoted pretty much my entire life to this issue, to basically call alarm. That was my purpose, to call alarm. This is not something that is solved by a person. This is not something you
look certainly. You're just alerting people to something strange going on.
So
when did this start? For me, about 97, 98, I began to notice that trails that disappeared within a minute maximum would be there 4 or 5 hours later. Clear skies would be turned into these trails that just expanded and merged. And then NASA comes out and says suddenly the Earth is 20% darker. Just on the weather control angle of this, what's going on?
Well, I did want to mention, as you said, there's a lot of things to this, and it's very true. And people do have a tendency to, I would say, either simplify it or avoid it because it's too complex, either or. And it is a complex issue, and over a period of 6-7 years, I have evolved to where there's about 7 areas that I think are involved in.
Well, let's run through the gamut, run the gauntlet with you on the other side, Clifford Carnicom. The website's carnicom.com. We have a link to it up on Infowars.com. Just vital information that this man has done. So many other great researchers, but he was the trailblazer. We'll be right back.